Awesome. All right. So I'm joined by President and CEO of ADTC, Tim Spurlock. Tim, you want to do a quick introduction?
Sure. Yeah. Well, my name's Tim Spurlock. I spent most of my career before I founded the company in educational publishing, educational technology. I came up with the thesis in about 2009. I did a bunch of research. I saw it firsthand. And in 2017, we made the decision to launch the company.
Awesome. Perfect. So I brought you here today. The topic of the conversation is the U.S. educational system has failed millions of Americans. This is on the homepage of your website. So I really wanted to dive into there. Before we gonna get into the details, what's kind of your overall thesis that brought you to that conclusion?
Well, I mean, I think obviously, right? We all love education. It's one of the most important things in the world. My mom's a teacher. My wife's a teacher. I have a college degree. My wife has a college degree. My kids have college degrees. I think that the educational system, let's look back to like the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, it worked, right? But I think that not a big surprise by design, the educational system moves glacially slow. And especially when it comes to career and technical training, and frankly, some areas of higher ed, it hasn't evolved and adapted nearly at the pace that basically business and society have evolved and adapted. And it's created some real challenges for companies as they try to serve workforces today.
Perfect. When you say the word failure, what does that mean in concrete terms?
Well, I mean, failure is probably a strong word, right? Maybe too strong a word because, if you look at some disciplines, it hasn't failed, right? I mean, I'm talking science, engineering, healthcare. I think what I would say is in general, it's failed to keep up with the space, the pace, the change, and the needs of the marketplace. Obviously, the internet was really kind of I would say, the starting line for that. I mean, back in the day, I was sitting in a classroom when I was a kid at Ohio State. I don't know, this has been like 1989. And a professor came in the class and was like, we just got this amazing thing. It's called email. And we all have all these, like, we have this like electronic mailbox and like, people can send me messages and it shows up on my electronic mailbox, just like the post office box, right? So that's really where the starting gate came up. And, the volumes and volumes of information that is released and is accessible now to the general public, it's just completely changed. But if you look at the models for delivering, we'll just call it post-secondary education, sure, there's online programs, every campus has its own learning management system. But at the end of the day, the core model is really the same. You either live on campus or you drive to campus, you sit in classes, and then you take a long time to get credentials, many of which those classes have absolutely no application for. And so, I would say that the failure is really the failure to evolve at the pace that business and frankly, society needs it to evolve at.
Perfect. Who benefits the most from kind of the status quo and who's being hurt with this system?
Well, the number one constituency that's being hurt, well, there's a lot, but number one is frankly the students, right? And let's take a look at that. I mean, the average, I know because I paid the tuition bills, the average cost to attend a state university, we'll say like Ohio State, is roughly low end 100 grand for 4 years, right? When I went to Ohio State, the tuition was a whopping total of $2,700 a year. And so you had the ability to kind of work your way through college, which is what I did, paying it on your own. With the proliferation of pricing, and let's not kid ourselves. I'm not the only guy that says this. There's a lot of guys way smarter than I say it. I mean, higher education is basically a cartel, right? They control the supply, so and the demand is always there, so they control the pricing. So I think what's the U.S. student loan debt? Roughly $3 trillion now, and I think that the wheels are wobbling if they're not already off. The overall model just doesn't work, and unfortunately, academic institutions, and I'll throw community colleges, higher education, traditional post-secondary technical schools, they're all working in that model because frankly, most of them are addicted to the Title IV funding student loan dollars, right? So the incentive is for a school is to keep students there as long as they possibly can because that student loan funding kind of feeds the beast. It's this echo chamber that schools they don't have the wherewithal to withstand. I'm sure most of them would love to. They just don't have the wherewithal to exit that loop because there's going to be some serious short to medium term pain. We see it today. I can't remember what the number is, but how many hundreds of colleges and universities have shut their doors in the last, let's say, 5 years. And frankly, the only reason a lot more haven't shut their doors is they got a ton of money during COVID and they get the student loan funding.
Yep. Perfect. And I've looked at a lot of the programs that you offer. It's amazing, and we definitely need more of it. What's the alternative in terms of, if somebody wants to get into the trades that, you guys are so focused in, what does that time and money commitment look like?
Yeah, there's really, I would say there's really three options. So let's say you're a kid and or an individual kid in high school or an individual who's looking for a career change. You really have three choices, right? The first is you go to your local community college. Many local community colleges have um, uh, upskilling training programs, and let's just say across the skilled trades. Here's the challenge with that is that what we've identified as the two biggest barriers to people entering skilled trades is time and money. So many of the community college students, they would be considered non-traditional students, right? They have kids, they have families, they have job responsibilities, and the career, the community college completion rate in 3 years is about 34%. In 2 years, it goes down to like 25%. So basically, one in four students who go to community college, most of which is funded by Title IV funding, only one in four complete, right? So that's number one. The second choice is so let's talk about money. I would consider that more time, right? The second choice is money. A typical, we'll call it traditional post-secondary technical, we'll call it a for-profit technical program is going to run between 40 and $60,000. And it's typically a 15-month program. So I haven't done the math, but let's say you take out a $50,000 student loan to attend one of these programs. Let's say you start out at $22 to $25 an hour. That's about $50,000 a year. I can't do the math in terms of what your take home pay is, but trying to service a debt like that is basically impossible, right? Like you're behind the eight ball from the first day. And so I think a lot of people were like, wait a minute, okay, I got 2 years, I got a 1 in 4 chance to graduate in community college. I look at a traditional post secondary school and I have potentially a $50,000 student loan debt. Let's say that's on the low end, $30,000. I took out one student loan when I was in college in 1989 or so. It was for $2,500. My payment was $50.05 a month for 5 years, and it was brutal. I can't imagine. And I started out making back in those days. I think I started out making like 25 grand a year, right? That was brutal. Your third option, and we're seeing more of this, but it's still very, I would say, pocketed. Or you just go an apprentice route. You find a company that will basically pay you to be an apprentice. The challenge with a lot of, and we'll call it skilled trades apprentice programs, the challenge with skilled trades apprentice programs is that virtually all of them are 4 years, right? And so again, let's look at time and money. You say to a young person today, hey, you're going to go to work at a company, we'll say a construction company, and you're not going to make great money out of the gate because you're an apprentice. You literally know nothing. So they're basically paying you for what you know, right? It makes sense. Well, you're going to make, let's say, in a low apprentice rate, and we'll say, let's say 18 to 20 bucks an hour. But then to get your journeyman, so to complete 4 years, you throw 4 years in front of an 18-year-old today, they're like, there's no way. I can go DoorDash or gig work or go work at Chipotle and make 25 bucks an hour. That's what I mean. It's really, and this is what we identified. It's not that people don't want to do this work. There are just enormous structural barriers with the system that prevent them from getting into these fields and being successful.
Perfect. So let's talk about the solution now. So I know your guys' model is very innovative in solving that problem. So how do you guys approach this as far as connecting people that would be good fits in the skilled trades with companies that desperately need them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing, and when we started the company, we tried every model. And I think the one thing that we settled on, and we really believe this to our core, is that employers have to get in the game, right? So essentially, we ask employers to get in the game. And typically what that looks like, it's paid training, right? Like they hire, we help them find, we'll say high aptitude, high potential people. And then the company hires that person on day one and then basically sponsors a short, intensive training program that kind of gets them on their way. And we feel very strongly about that. The second thing that really helped us kind of prove that thesis is if a company or we partner with a company to provide very focused, specific, bespoke training where everything taught in that training course really leads to what am I doing to be successful on the first day of work? I used to publish 3,000-page diesel mechanic textbook volumes. Now let's not kid ourselves, right? Is a kid, a student going to read a 3,000-page diesel textbook? Probably not. And is a new diesel mechanic, HVAC technician, power gen technician, whatever you want to call it, on the job, going to be asked to do a complicated task, even if they enter that job with a, we'll call it a more advanced credential? The answer is no. They all start out at the first place, which is on the bottom. And so we really feel that it's important to kind of that employers get in the game. I had a former HR leader who's retired and does consulting tell me something a few months ago, and it really stuck with me. She's like, business is the last institution that can solve this problem. And I really believe it, right? And so we believe that the companies have to get in the game. We believe that companies need to be willing to just accept the facts of life, that life isn't perfect, that there will be some attrition, but that way more often than not, the investment pays itself multiple times over throughout that individual's employment.
So, what are the effects downstream from this, right? So, the failure in education, what's the impact on the market?
Yeah, I mean, and straight out of the gate, this is a generational issue, right? And there's a couple things that really impact it. Number one, there just aren't as many babies being born today. When my boys were born, 5-ish years ago, let's say, there were about 4 million births a year in the United States. That number is now down to about 3.4 million, right? So just do the math, right? So just take 3.4 million and then just extrapolate that out. And so, that just, it goes across all kinds of different, we'll just call them careers. And then you're left with kind of like, the skilled trades bucket. And I'll tell you a good story that will, sort of illustrate that is that I was at a meeting and there was a working group of construction companies in the state of Colorado. This is like a couple months ago. Working group in the state of Colorado. Colorado in the next 5 years needs 30,000 construction workers in the next 5 years. Today, they need 6,000 craftsmen. You don't create a craftsman in 6 weeks, 6 months, or a year. You create a craftsman in 5 to 7 years, right? And so these folks were already saying that you could already see the effects of that in terms of job slipping, work not being done. The work isn't as professional or quality as it would have been like 10 years ago. It's funny. I had a call with a financial guy, and we were just talking about stuff, and he said, honestly, the biggest threat to, everybody's like, AI, is the bubble going to bust? Is the bubble going to blah? And he said the biggest threat to that is really not like companies or demand. The biggest threat to that is there aren't going to be enough people to build the data centers and do the work so that data centers can operate and begin making money for the companies. So, one other little story, we've tracked this a lot. And back in the day when we were just training diesel mechanics, you could go to Indeed and you would see like 20 to 30,000 openings for diesel mechanics across the United States. That number hasn't moved, right? In 9 years. And the crazier thing is that there's been a 2 to 3 year freight recession that trucking and transportation companies are still in, and the demand is there. And so again, it's structural, it's generational. You've got guys my age, right, who are tired of getting beat up on a job site, being under a truck. They retire. Stock market's been really good. Their 401ks are packed. So they're like, I'm out. And for 30 plus years, we really haven't had a corresponding number of new entrants into the profession. And so, like, this is literally a generational thing. And I frankly don't think the U.S. at a government level, I would argue that there should be a literally almost cabinet level spot for what do we do to build things in this country. Let's take commercial instruction, for example. Drive down the road here in Columbus, Ohio. Every hospital on the planet has a project going because the baby boomers are all now at the age where they need way more utilization of hospital services, et cetera, right? Who's going to build this stuff? So then let's look at data centers, right? So you have data centers that are springing up everywhere. And so there's a couple things there, right? You need the workers to build the buildings, but here's the downstream effects on that. Data centers, especially for critical infrastructure technology, they're hiring electricians and HVAC technicians, right, to service this stuff. So guess what they do? They then drop into a commercial or residential construction company. They sweep up as many electrical or HVAC techs as they can. They pay them really well. The work is better because most of it's inside on data center work. And then, so where does that go downstream? And eventually someone is left holding the bag, right? Someone isn't going to get jobs done. And we're already seeing that manifest.
So one of the things, and I wouldn't say I was skeptical, but going through your site, so a lot of your programs are real intensive, like short, like 200 to 300 hour programs, like 6 weeks. Does that actually work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so when we built the initial truck program, we built it kind of like I described earlier, right? We said, what are the most important tasks that an entry level diesel mechanic is going to have to do on the first day on the job? And that's how we built the curriculum. And then we iterated and just made it better. And this is kind of sort of the unseen thing that goes on too. And sort of, I'll call it traditional education, is a lot of these schools don't have the staff to really effectively staff a lab. Right. And so we kind of turn that on its head. I'm like, why are we wasting time in a classroom? Let's take all of this time or the vast majority of this time and spend it on actual working equipment, spend it in a lab. So that's what we did. And so about 3 years into the business, and this for diesel mechanics, but it works everywhere. We had a Fortune 500 company who we partnered with, and they assigned a data science team to us to measure, is this program really effective? And what the data science team concluded was that there's no statistical difference in a completer graduate from ADTC program versus a graduate that we would hire from a community college, a for-profit
Wow.
post secondary technical school, or from, let's just say, a competing business down the street. In fact, what they found was that the folks that came out of our programs, they started out a little bit slower, but as they progressed, their ceilings got higher faster, right? And so, yeah, we have folks who literally came into our program 9 years ago who were working in warehouses, making $12 an hour. Many of those folks are now running entire service operations. Many make over six figures. And so, those are folks coming in with no applicable training. Typical class for us, we would do a collision truck body repair program. Typical class for us, 80% of the new students in that class, they didn't even know how to read a tape measure, right? And 6 weeks later, they're left being efficient, productive, and immediately generating revenue and profits for that company.
Wow, that's amazing. Let's say somebody's watching right now and they're like, I agree with everything he just said. How do they get in touch with you and get the conversation started?
Sure, they can. Probably the easiest thing to do is email me at tspurlock at ADTC Alpha Delta Tango Charlie.co, not .com,
I'll
ADTC
put that in as
co.
well, Tim.
Yeah, you can find me at LinkedIn too.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll put that up on the screen. Perfect. Any last message?
No, I just really appreciate you giving me the time, and I love talking about this stuff because I've seen it work. I know it works, and I've seen it work, and I'm just looking forward to doing more.
Perfect. Yeah, I think next time we can talk about, I know you've said in the past that companies are built to keep people out and not bring people
Yeah,
in. So I'd love
yeah,
to dive
yeah.
deeper on that next time,
Okay,
but really
yeah.
appreciate your time and we'll meet again
Look forward
soon.
to it.
All
All
right.
right.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks. See you. All right. Thank you. Bye.